I wonder if Dominic LeBlanc is enjoying his new position as finance minister. Justin Trudeau isn't around to answer questions, so LeBlanc has to do it for him. Let's hear what he said.
So what did your colleagues, is it Ottawa that asked you, or?
I'm wondering, and I mean, we all have this question. So does Trudeau have the full support of his cabinet to stay on as prime minister?
Yes.
Yeah, that's because if anyone disagrees with Trudeau in his cabinet, he just removes that person from cabinet. For all this talk that Trudeau gives about how the Liberal government is so diversified and is strong because it has various opinions on various issues and matters, it sure doesn't seem like that behind closed doors. It seems like whoever dares disagree with Dear Justin is removed from their position and replaced with someone who will not utter so much as a single word against Trudeau or so much as think a single thought in opposition to our prime minister.
Simple yes?
Yeah.
Okay. And as a follow-up, would you like the opportunity in the future to lead this country if you were given the chance?
So full points for trying with that question. If the prime minister has the full support of his cabinet, then why would we contemplate what happens after he decides to leave?
So the truth is, LeBlanc is actually a much better politician than Freeland was. Like, you have to watch out for LeBlanc. The guy is seasoned in his position. He knows how to handle reporters. He knows how to handle journalists. He knows what to say and what not to say to stay in the good graces of powers that be. And so when pressed about whether or not he'd like to lead the country, he just deflects it casually.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I have a similar question. Liberal backbenchers here in your home province want or have called for Prime Minister Trudeau to step down. What are your thoughts on that?
So I've answered that question in other fora as well. I respect the views of my colleagues. The New Brunswick MPs who've shared that view are friends of mine. They're people I respect. Some of them have been friends of mine for a couple of decades. If you think of a guy like Serge Cormier or René Arsenault that I've known for a long time, I recruited Jenica Atwin to the Liberal caucus. So I'm very proud of that. She's a terrific MP for Fredericton. That's a view they're expressing. The Prime Minister listened carefully when that view was expressed to him.
Oh, I have no doubt he listened carefully. I have no doubt he listened carefully so that he is or can plan what to do with those MPs who would dare try to subvert his rule. Like, we remember what happened with those MPs or, on the Liberal backbench who said the carbon tax isn't particularly well liked in our constituencies. It's like Trudeau silenced them.
Colleagues did what is the appropriate thing. They, in a caucus meeting, expressed those views directly to the Prime Minister himself. He listened. He, in some cases, responded to specific things that were raised. And he said he would reflect carefully on what he's heard. That's how the process works. That's the way these things are decided. And I'm confident that the government will remain focused on the work that Canadians want us to focus on. If we're
The work we want the Liberal government to focus on is removing themselves from power. And when Trudeau says, I'll reflect on what you're telling me, that is, for every politician, for every Canadian, proof that Trudeau has no intention whatsoever on listening to the concerns of anyone close to him or those on the opposite side. You and I know that whenever a child asks us, can we do this or that? And we respond with, I'll think about it, it means no. So too here with Trudeau. When he says, I'll reflect on your concerns, it means I'm going on vacation and I'll see you at the end of January.
Potentially 5 weeks away from 25% tariffs applied across the board to Canadian exports to the United States, Canadians would understandably, I think, be impatient with a government that looks at itself all the time. We shouldn't be looking.
That is exactly what the Liberal government does. Look at themselves all the time. They look at themselves in the mirror and they fan their pride. They look at themselves in the mirror and they say, look at how glorious we are. Look at how powerful we are. Look at our nice silk suits. Look at the splendor of our majesty. Take some more pictures. Take some more pictures. LeBlanc, that's exactly what the Liberal government does.
Inward, we shouldn't be worrying about ourselves. The government got the confidence of the House of Commons 10 times last week. So the opposition parties that are all outraged, they need an election right away, they voted confidence in the government 10 times last week.
The NDP voted confidence in the government in part, of course, because Singh wants his pension, because Singh is perhaps one of the weakest politicians in Canadian history, which is really saying something. That's why. The reason the Liberal government is still in power with this minority government is because men and women are self-interested. And even though we have all these politicians who stand up in the House of Commons and say we are here to serve our constituents, the truth is they are there to serve themselves. And so if it benefits themselves, if some action benefits themselves, then they'll take that action. If an action doesn't benefit themselves, like in this case, having an election for an NDP party that is doing terribly right now, then they won't do it. Hence Singh's hesitancy to stand by his supposedly ironclad morals.
So Parliament comes back on the 27th of January. Mr. Trump is inaugurated on January 20th. The work that the Prime Minister asked me to do as the Finance Minister with issues around border security is to work with the incoming administration, and I'll have meetings over the Christmas holidays with some key players in the incoming Trump administration. So that's the work that I'm focused on doing. And I think Canadians would be impatient if we spent an inordinate amount of time focusing on ourselves.
That was my follow-up too about President-elect Trump. What do you make of his comments on social media about Canada being the 51st state and Governor Trudeau? Does that irk you, and how are relations with the US right now?
What do we make of Trump's comments? What are we as Canadians to make of Trump's comments? Poking fun at Justin Trudeau? Well, we're to make that our leader is embarrassingly weak. Embarrassingly weak. He is disgraced on the national stage. He has no particular, or he governs no particular respect. He generates no respect from nations around the world. On the contrary, Trump is doing what every other leader already does to Trudeau.
I was at the dinner at Mar-a-Lago 3 weeks ago. The president made those comments joking. And there was a cheerful banter. It was a private dinner. There was a cheerful banter between the Prime Minister. I even chirped in with something. This was a joke. He's gone on to say some of this stuff in social media. Again, our government's job is not to respond to everything that President Trump's going to post. He's quite active on social media. We again would be spending a lot of time focusing on his social media comments. What we're doing is focusing with him, but more importantly with people like Howard Lutnick, who will become the incoming Commerce Secretary responsible for the U.S. Trade Representative function. I had a call this week with a very positive preliminary call with Tom Homan, who President Trump has tapped to be the border czar, who's from upstate New York. He knows the northern border very well. We agreed to meet in the coming days after Christmas to talk about the package I announced, $1.3 billion on Tuesday around enhanced border security posture, the fight against fentanyl. So that's the work we're focused on. And your second.
So the American government, Trump and the American government, is so clearly in a position of authority over this Canadian government. You can just tell even from LeBlanc's tone and the way he talks and what he talks about. Obviously, Trump and his administration are so clearly in a position of control when negotiating with Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. It makes you wonder what's going to happen to Canada with our trade and so on in the coming months. Trump is doing what's best, what he believes is best for America. The Americans voted in Trump and his administration because they believe Trump and his administration are going to uphold and increase the American interest. Not so here in Canada, not with Trudeau. No. Does anyone here think that Trudeau is going to protect Canada's interests? Trudeau protects every other country's interests except Canada's interest. Trudeau protects everyone except for the Canadians who supposedly elected him. So we are when it comes to negotiating, we are in a desperately bad position.
Second, the last part of your question, I'm confident that we have a cordial, collaborative discussion with President Trump's incoming administration, but we have a lot of work to do. I don't underestimate for a minute the threat that those tariffs would mean to Canadian workers, to the Canadian economy. I also think, and we said this to Mr. Trump at Mar-a-Lago, it would also be negative for American consumers. If he won an election largely on the cost of living in the United States, this may not be the best way to answer that concern in the United States as well. But that's the work we need to continue to do. So far, I'm encouraged. We have an attentive ear. We have a cordial series of counterparts that want to work with us, but the work isn't finished. And we've got to work right up until January 20th. And then after he's inaugurated and he takes office with his incoming administration, we got to continue doing that work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
LeBlanc is just as political as Freeland. He's just as political as her, and he's just as unqualified for the position that he now holds as Freeland. He might talk a smoother talk. He might command a bit more authority in the room. He might not say, okay, and so many times as Freeland does or did, but he's a liberal put in the position to be a talking piece, a mouthpiece, all the same.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Ministre. Moi, j'aimerais revenir à...
Pas été dans ce bailleur social. Il y a raison ici. Défi de taille, part of that cabinet. Mr. Carney isn't. C'est pas du tout le cas pour le moment.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci à vous.
Hi. Can you give us the story on Mark Carney? Is it over now?
I haven't had any conversations with Mark Carney myself. What I did say to a colleague of yours from Brunswick News, I think yesterday, is when the Prime Minister asked me to be the finance minister, he told me that I was going to be the finance minister in his government until the next election.
Believe it or not, it's probably not a great idea to trust Trudeau when he says anything, considering it's Justin Trudeau. So if he tells you, Dominic LeBlanc, that you are going to be the finance minister until the next election, you can put absolutely zero stock in that statement by Trudeau, because every other statement Trudeau's made, or all of these other statements that Trudeau makes, turns out to be false. Budgets balance itself, false. Sunny ways, doesn't look so sunny to me right now. Oh yeah, the economic state of Canada is going to be great, false. Soft landing, whatever that means, false. Lie, 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 lie. So why would you at any point now believe Trudeau when he says anything?
I was going to be the finance minister to present the next budget, and 2025 will be an election year. So that's the work that I'm doing. And again, I wasn't part of any conversations with Mr. Carney, but Mr. Carney isn't about to become Canada's finance minister in the short term. The Prime Minister asked me to start that work and to get ready for a budget in the spring.
And what advice would you give the Prime Minister to reset the government with a new cabinet?
Again, that's the prerogative of the Prime Minister. I may or may not have a conversation if he asks me views on some colleagues. Sometimes he has, sometimes he hasn't. Those are private conversations. If a member of Parliament or a minister talks publicly about those conversations, normally you wouldn't be part of that cabinet for long. And I really like the job I have, and I haven't finished. So I'm going to say that should be decided by the Prime Minister, and I have full confidence in his judgment.
Oh, I'm sure he does like the job he has. It's cushy. He's had it for a long time. It pays very, very, very well, and he gets to exercise some power.
Minister, you've described this as the largest investment since the Confederation Bridge. The Science Centre was previously described as that at around $600 million.
So, new announcements by the Liberals. LeBlanc is taking questions. Where's Trudeau? Well, it sounds like Trudeau's on vacation from what I'm reading and what I can tell. Thus, he has his most trusted members, as if that means anything anymore, as if it ever did mean anything, of his cabinet answer tough questions or questions in general for him. Like, where has Trudeau been on these Trump talks? All he's done is pawn off all of these questions to other members of cabinet. You have Trump taking the lead on these matters. You have Trump in America who is exercising his authority, and you have Trudeau cowering in a corner. But again, that's to be expected considering the history of Justin Trudeau when confronted with serious or tough decisions or tough negotiations. When asked by the Peaceful Freedom Convoy to, meet, chat about what was happening in the country, considering it was affecting all of us, what did Trudeau do? He did the same thing he's done, all his political life. He runs and he hides.